gentlemen, it is race preparation time for the Indianapolis 500. Teams are going to be focused solely on the race setups from now on, now that qualifying is over, and today is going to be the first day that we will really get a judge of who's going to be the fastest for the Indianapolis 500 coming up this Sunday. So today we had some very interesting things happening within practice. We had the first big crash of the month. A couple of teams trying to push the limits on race setups to see what works well in traffic. And Chip Ganassi, despite not really running that much, was the fastest out of anyone by quite a bit today. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the first day of full race practice for the Indianapolis 500. First up, we're going to take a look at the fastest 5 speeds. 4 out of the top 5 cars were Chip Ganassi cars, which is crazy. Fastest was Alex Palou with a 229.441. Second fastest, Scott Dixon with a 229 even. Third fastest was Jimmy Johnson with a 228.467. Fourth fastest, Takuma Sato, the only non-Ganassi car in the top 5 with a 228.381. And fifth fastest was Marcus Ericsson with a 228.017. And out of these top 5, it looks like Ganassi is going to be able to keep up well in the pack, because these times that they set were almost exclusively right out of the garage, around the hour mark, hour and a half mark through the session. The Ganassi cars came out and started doing their runs, and Ericsson went out first and set the fastest time, and then Dixon went out and set an even faster time, and then Palou went out and set an even faster time within the first 5 laps of his run. Jimmy Johnson was the only car in there that didn't do that, essentially right out of the gate. Jimmy had been out much longer throughout the session, and he had done some running on his own, and some running looked like him and Tony Kanaan. So Johnson got a little bit more no-toe running, which I guess is valuable if you're planning to lead the race, which maybe Jimmy is. Obviously, he's in a Ganassi car with a decent starting spot, so possibly. But I'd say, based on just what's happened in this practice, Ganassi is probably going to be the team to beat in the 500. The other thing that we can look at for a possible gauge on who's going to be quick, just who has the most experience, who's run the most laps in today's practice, which the only non-Ganassi car in the top 5 in overall results was the car with the most laps run, which is Takuma Sato, with 106 laps run in a 2-hour practice. Keep in mind, this isn't a 6-hour practice like we've had last week. Just a 2-hour practice now, and Sato went out and ran 106 laps, which means he was running for quite a bit of the session. Second most laps was Scott Mclaughlin with a 102. Sorry, I'm trying to not read off speeds. Third, Romain Grosjean with 101 laps set. Fourth, Christian Lundgaard with 100 laps set. I don't know what I'm saying. And also with 100 laps set is Colton Herta. So those 5 are the people that were out on the track the most today. Theoretically means they're gaining the most experience, they're getting the most time running in traffic. Obviously, Sato put up the fastest time. A couple of the other guys throughout here were kind of randomly spread throughout the order, so not entirely sure that matters, but that's a way that you can judge stuff. There's not exactly a very good way to judge who's going to be fast in race pace simply based off of numbers, because 1-lap times don't necessarily translate to being fast throughout the race, and I mean, especially considering the fact that 1-lap runs are going to be with a big toe, so unless that, which theoretically could be translated to you can run well in the pack, which it seems like Ganassi could, along with their big 1-lap numbers. They were running pretty fast with in the pack, and they were moving up through the pack. So it looks like, at least looking at that, Ganassi is on pace to be probably the fastest team. I'd say one of the Ganassi cars is probably going to be the odds-on favorite to win the 500. I'd say it's probably an even likelihood at this point that Ganassi wins versus someone else. We've said that about teams in the past, and it doesn't always translate into anything actually turning out that way, but based on this first day of practice, looks like Ganassi is going to be extremely fast. So obviously we'll learn more about that on Friday for Carb Day, but looks like they're pretty fast today. So I'm just going to move on to some other statistics here. I'm going to look at no-toe times, even though I don't have a graphic made for this. I'm just going to list off a couple of things that I found interesting. First and second in the no-toe times were the two Ed Carpenter cars. Renus VK fastest with a 221.484, and second fastest Ed Carpenter with a 221.304. Moving next on the list, third was Scott Dixon with a 220.520, and fourth, Jimmy Johnson with a 220.412. Now, the main reason you'd look at no-toe times at this point would be who's going to be able to lead the race well. Obviously not surprising that Dixon's up there. Probably not surprising that the Carpenter cars are up there. Obviously, they seem to be good for qualifying, and that doesn't directly translate over, but it somewhat translates over that they could be fast out the front. I mean, last year, Renus VK and Connor Daly led quite a bit of the race, especially at the beginning. So I wouldn't be surprised if Carpenter cars, obviously, VK's third and Carpenter's fourth in the starting order. So if they get to the front, I wouldn't be surprised to see them being able to lead pretty well. And, of course, the Ganassi cars are also up there in the running. Ericsson and Pillow both didn't have no-toe times, so obviously nothing to go off of there. Some other people that were fast in no-toe times, fifth fastest, Padwell Ward. Sixth fastest was Will Power. Seventh fastest was Felix Rosenquist, so I guess another teammate of Padwell Ward was fifth. Eighth in no-toe times, I'm just looking at the timing screen here, was Tony Kanaan, another Ganassi car. Which, speaking of Tony Kanaan, he was actually quite far down the order. He didn't do a lot of running in the pack. He only did 31 laps total, and a lot of that was just running with Jimmy Johnson in, one car or two car runs. But he set a 224.517 and was 22nd overall. So Tony didn't do a lot of running in the pack. There's no cause for concern there. All of his teammates are fast. I think just Tony didn't get a lot of running in the pack, so not a surprise to see him a bit further down there. I'm trying to think of other things that you could look at today before we get into some of the incidents that happened. The only other thing I could think of would be Ganassi being kind of slow to get out on track. Like I'd talked about, the Ganassi cars came out pretty much past the hour in the session mark. And that seemed to be due to just taking a while to get through all the changes from switching to qualifying setups to race setups and qualifying, engines to race engines. So just kind of explaining what that means. All of the Ganassi cars, obviously, were in the Fast 12, meaning they ran yesterday at 4 to 6. Obviously, 4 out of the 5 were in the Fast 6. Which, again, that's just pushing the time back even further. That's putting it to about 6 p.m., a couple of hours for tech inspection, probably 8 or 9 p.m., and at that point, they're probably going to be done for the day working on the cars. So that means that probably the Ganassi cars, this morning, they probably started working on switching out engines, bolting on more downforce for, race setups, essentially putting on whatever race setups they were running last week. So probably took them longer to get on all of that stuff because they obviously were in the Fast 6, but also because they had to do that for all 5 cars. They were the only team that had every single car in the Fast 12 that had to, especially with a team that big, 5 cars. That's a lot of turnover to go through. And considering this session started at 1, they weren't able to get out for the start, but still pretty promising based on what we've seen with their times. Like, it'd be concerning if they got out there and were 20th, but the fact that they went out there and immediately set top 5 times for the entire day, there's no cause for concern at Ganassi. And again, the fact that they were able to do that makes me think that they could be decently fast for the race. So, yeah, that's about all I have for results here. I'll just go ahead and list off the top 10. Pelot, Dixon, Jimmy, Takuma Sato. 5th is Marcus Ericsson. 6th is Joseph Newgarden. 7th is Connor Daly. 8th is Marco Andretti. 9th is Sage Karam. And 10th is Simon Pagenaud. That's just your top 10 there. So, last thing I'm going to talk about today is some of the incidents that happened in practice. There were 2 major things besides just, people kind of trying to push the limits and, getting close to the wall. There were 2 major things that actually happened throughout the day that I'd consider, incidents. The first of which was Scott McLaughlin just exiting his pit box, had just looped the rear end of the car. Obviously, you're getting a lot of oversteer exiting your pit box just because, you're going from 0 miles an hour trying to keep the engine running. So I guess it's somewhat easy to do that, especially considering it's Indy. Downforce doesn't matter much, but it does matter some, and it's somewhat easy to do that. Obviously, I have the replay up here of what happened. Didn't end up affecting anything majorly. And the second incident, though, was a big incident. So, going into turn 1, Dalton Kellett was on the outside of Roman Grosjean. And coming into the turn, you had Kellett on the outside, pretty much alongside of him. Kellett was the passing car down the straightaway. Grosjean was in front, and Kellett came to the outside. And Kellett was passing Grosjean, so he assumed that he was going to be able to just continue on and that Grosjean would back out. That didn't end up happening, and Grosjean continued to keep his foot in the throttle and got in front of Kellett. And once Kellett saw that, he started backing out of the throttle and was trying to get in line behind Grosjean for turn 1, obviously to not get in, the outside lane. It's not going to be very grippy at Indy. But as he was trying to do that, obviously he's backing out of the throttle. He's doing that quite late in the corner since he didn't, it wasn't exactly very obvious what Grosjean was going to do until later on. And coming into the corner, obviously he's backing off the throttle. That's pushing more of the balance to the front of the car, since obviously you're not getting the rear end of the car getting any, push, which is putting more rear downforce on. The front end of the car got heavy, rear end got light, and he just flipped right around, spun, and it looked like it was a 1.5 turn and hit the left side of the car on the safer barrier in turn 1. I've got pictures up here of what the car looked like after the crash. It's a pretty big hit. Obviously, if this was happening, last Tuesday, last Wednesday, I think you'd be going to a backup car. This late in the week, especially considering the 4 or 5 day break that we're going to get from Monday to Friday, they'll probably rebuild that car. Kellett said that this happened late in the session, around 30 minutes to go. Kellett said they were still able to get some decent data from the session, and they were still decently pleased with where they were. So as long as they're able to get everything back to how it was, shouldn't be too much issues. They'll have carb day to shake that out and figure everything out for the car. But definitely interesting to see that it's the first crash of the month. It's the fact that it happened on Monday, honestly, that's quite a long time for that to not happen for. Obviously, we'd had 2 cars hit the wall out of 2, but those were minor wall taps and really didn't do any damage to the car besides some cosmetic stuff, So this is the first really big incident of the month. Hopefully the last, I guess. I'm sure there'll be something in the race because, there always is, but hopefully we can get through carb day without any more wrecks. So that's about all that I have for today. So I've got a video coming out tomorrow. It should be out. I think I've got it set to come out at 3. I'm going to be reviewing the 3 Hy-Vee promotional 164 cars. I got those off eBay, and I wanted to make a video about that just to kind of fill up time. Obviously, I'll have Carb Day review out Friday. Saturday, I'll be coming out with my starting grid for the Indianapolis 500. I don't know if I'll have anything out Wednesday and Thursday. If I come up with something to put out, I might do that. If not, just have a 2-day break in between then. But yeah, that's about all I have. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I'll see you all Tuesday. Bye.